All right, so we're going to start with a moment of silence. We've had a legend of ours pass, Mr. George Meacham, Jr., and we want to just bow for a moment of silence. All right, so we're going to start with a moment of silence. We've had a legend of ours pass, Mr. George Meacham, Jr. Thank you. If everybody will stand, Ms. Patel will lead us in Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
All right, before we begin official business, I just want to send a thanks to Ms. Bradford and the Stewart family for hosting us tonight. We appreciate you opening up your school and making it available to us, so thank you. All right, so a couple other things I want to mention before we get started. As chairman of the Cleveland City School Boards of Education, a couple things I wanted to mention. I'm committed to running an orderly and efficient meeting, treating everyone with respect, providing an equal opportunity for all board members to voice their opinion on all matters, and board members are to communicate through Director of Schools for addressing his staff. A couple reminders for parents and community members per our Board of Education policies, which can be found on the clevelandschools.org website. You can go there to the website and click menu, select Policy Manual under the Board of Education section, and you'll find a list of all of our policies there. I encourage you to take some time to do that. It's an enjoying reading experience. Our meetings are not public forum. However, the board has made accommodations for you to address the board via School Board Policy 1.404, which has the requirements listed. And tonight we actually have a parent presenting, and they will be limited to 5 minutes per board policy. To keep things consistent and fair, we'll have a timer on display up here for the presenter, the speaker, to see how much time is remaining. And board members have the option to request additional time via vote. All right, so first thing we have on the agenda today is our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have approval of regular agenda from last meeting, approval of minutes from the September 6th board meeting, approval of overnight trips, and then approval of review date only policies. So we made a change into our policies where we wanted to demonstrate that they were being read and updated on a frequently basis. And even those that did not have any changes, we wanted to note that it was reviewed. And then we have a couple of second reading policies as listed on the agenda. So for the consent agenda, is there anything that we want to remove, board members? All right, so I'd like to entertain a motion to for the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right. So all in favor of accepting the consent agenda, signify by a yes vote.
Yes. Yes.
Any noes? All right, 100% yes votes. All right, we're moving along. This may not be a long meeting. All right, regular agenda. We have spotlights that we're going to hear from the Director of Schools. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Starting tonight, we have two spotlights. We have our AP and National Merit Scholars first. Mr. Pritchard, principal of Cleveland High School, and Ms. Autumn O'Brien are going to come up and present those to us today. So Mr. Pritchard is coming to present those today.
How are y'all doing this evening?
Great.
Good. So every fall, the AP program recognizes high school students who have demonstrated outstanding college level achievement through their performance on multiple AP exams. And so those awards come in different sizes, different levels and types. The AP Scholar is granted to students who receive a score of 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams. An AP Scholar with Honor is granted to students who receive an average of at least 3.25 on all of their AP exams and scores a 3 or higher on 4 or more of their AP exams. And an AP Scholar with Distinction is granted to students who receive an average score of at least a 3.5 on all AP exams and scores a 3 or higher on 5 or more of these exams. So first of all, let's give these guys a round of applause. There are some in here. So we're so proud of you guys. We're going to recognize them, and if you guys will come up and meet the board members, shake hands, and then stay up front for a group picture afterwards. So first one is Avery Cabot. She is an AP Scholar. Next is Eleanor Chrisman. She is an AP Scholar. Next we have Skylar Epperson, AP Scholar with Honor. Callie Latham is not here tonight. She is visiting a college in Colorado that I think you guys helped pay for her flight out there. So,
Congratulations.
She's headed out there. Ella Lipscomb is a 12th grade AP Scholar. Next up is Mr. Alex Moore, AP Scholar. Next is our very own Arna Patel. She is an AP Scholar with Distinction. Next is Vinyak Patel, AP Scholar. Next we have Jessica Pham, AP Scholar with Honor. And finally, Mr. Riley White, he is an AP Scholar. We also have 2 National Merit. One is a Commended Scholar. A Commended National Merit Commended Scholar. Commended students are recognized for the exceptional academic promise demonstrated by their outstanding performance on the SAT exam. And so Arna Patel, again. And we also have a National Merit semifinalist. The National Merit semifinalist selection is based on the SAT National Merit qualifying test taken their junior year. The nationwide pool of semifinalists representing less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors includes the highest scoring entrance in each state, and that is Miss Bailey Johnson. Thank you so much for recognizing them tonight. We are so proud of you guys.
Congratulations. Mr. Pritchard, why don't you join up here, and why don't you all come in a little here, and then we'll get a group picture.
Yep.
If you want us to sneak in behind you there.
Yeah, whatever you'd like to do.
This is not a height issue. Peggy and Carol might have to get on a chair.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Congratulations. You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome if you want to. Go somewhere. Board, tonight we also have the Bradley Cleveland Public Education Lead Fellowship folks with us tonight. And Lynn Voles is going to come up and introduce you to this group.
Thank you, Dr. Dyer and Chairman Tucker. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. with me tonight are 15 lead fellows. Actually, last month, we began this leadership fellowship, but it goes back a little further than last month. In 2015, BCPEF was invited to collaborate with the PEF Chattanooga with bringing participants into their annual leadership fellowship. It was a year-long program, and since 2015, BCPEF has paid for, sponsored 18 Bradley County and Cleveland City Schools educators to go through this fellowship. It was an excellent program. 12 of those 18, I might say, are current principals, vice principals, or in leadership positions. In the spring of 2021, PEF Chattanooga indicated they were no longer going to be hosting that program for a couple of reasons. And so at that point, Dr. Dyer and Dr. Cash began talking to us about the continued need for developing leadership skills in our local educators. So with their encouragement and the help of some career educators, a plan came together, and we actually began this year-long fellowship last month. I would say that one of the significant positives of the PEF program was the collaboration of educators from multiple systems. And so when we began looking at it locally, we knew, and Dr. Dyer and Dr. Cash knew, that they wanted it to be a joint operation. And so BCPEF was the go-to organization to host this. Two career educators, two career superb educators, I might say, Debbie Torres and Terry Murray, agreed to facilitate this year-long program, or this 9-month program. They also have had a significant part in the planning of this program. Additionally, another career educator, Jane Littlejohn, who works for BCPEF, provides the organizational support. So these 3 educators have been working together tirelessly, many, many hours, to put together a program that I think will produce the results that we're all hoping for, including the results that these 15 fellows are hoping for. When it came to funding, they came to me, of course, right? So at that point, we talked about the need, really, to fund this program for at least a year so we could see how it would go. And we approached 2 private family foundations who have been very supportive of both Cleveland City Schools and Bradley County Schools, the Tucker Foundation and the CS Foundation. And they both were very encouraging and excited about the opportunity to invest in leadership in these 2 school systems. Both of these family foundations are well aware of the innovation, of the commitment to quality of both Cleveland City and Bradley County Schools. They know us very, very well. As you all know, we provide them with a lot of feedback on the impact of their funding, of the past programs that they've funded. So there was not any hesitation in funding this leadership fellowship. So the fellowship began in September with a 2-day retreat. And these fellows again meet this Thursday for their 2nd session. There will be 9 sessions totally. Each month we'll host one, ending in May. The investment, of course, by the foundations pays for the majority of the costs. However, I would like to say that the 2 school systems also invest in these 15 fellows. You pay for the time that they spend away from their normal responsibilities in the schools. BCPEF is investing as well. We pay for Jane's salary. We are hosting these gatherings for 6 of the 9 sessions. And so we are investing, the systems are investing, and these foundations are investing. What we're requiring of the fellows is a significant amount of personal investment in terms of time, focus, and energy outside of their normal work hours. I think that you have the names of these fellows in your packet and the schools which they represent. But what I'd like to do is just ask them, if they would, to raise their hand so you know that they're here and that they are in the audience. And they seem to be following directions very well. So thank you for the opportunity to tell you about this. Leadership is critical. And it is a joy to be able to work with Cleveland City and Bradley County Schools toward the development, the further development of these leadership fellows. So thank you, thank you. Any questions? Well, you know where to find me if you have questions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. All right, so next on the agenda, we're going to be hearing from a community member parent, Mr. Chris Berry.
Thank you very much. Before I introduce myself, I'd actually like to thank Dr. Dyer for his recommendation and the school board's approval last meeting of creating an additional kindergarten teacher position at Yates, where they had 25 students per classroom. I'm hopeful today that I'll point out that that occurrence of that same situation isn't unique in our system, challenge you to examine the priority of our class sizes at the elementary schools, and propose a specific solution for your consideration. We'll move quickly through these. My name is Chris Berry. There's some information about me, but with the limitation on time, let's get straight to the topic at hand. So, why am I here? Why do I want to continue the discussion about our staffing levels at elementary schools? We had two similar situations happen simultaneously this year that didn't make sense to me. At Ross, we had a third grade situation where basically they had 22 or 23 students per class. An additional teacher was added, and it resulted in 18 students per class. At Candies Creek, there were initially 19 students per class. A teacher was removed from that grade, and the result was they sit at 25 students per class. Now, Dr. Dyer discussed last meeting why one of those three budgeted teacher positions for this year went to Ross's third grade. They have to stand alone on their numbers and meet the 20 students per teacher ratio, but from an outside looking in, this situation didn't make sense. However, so I don't have issues at all with Ross adding a teacher, but at Candies Creek, a third grade teacher was moved to fourth grade because of the similar state ratio requirements. And I'm going to give you a quick case study on how that happened, the chaos it created within that school, and why we should prioritize having enough teachers in our classrooms on day one to start the school year. So let's move forward. You've seen a table similar to this at the last meeting. The version you saw last meeting was current to that date. This is actually the table from the beginning of the school year. So let's take a quick look at what happened. The first item, the system had planned on 3 new hires for the year. 2 of those hires were related to ESL and ECR, or ERC, sorry. The last of those budgets went toward the new third grade teacher at Ross that I mentioned. So the red item there, 22.75, was the ratio that exceeded state limits, so we added a new teacher there. Next, we needed to fix fourth grade at Candies Creek. You see that item was red as well. They had 3 classrooms, around 31 students each. However, we'd already used our 3 new hire positions that were budgeted. So the principal was instructed to move one of their K through 3 teachers to fourth grade. The viable options were either kindergarten or third grade. I think we can all say Ms. Irby made a great choice by not maxing out the kindergarten classes, so she chose to move a third grade teacher into fourth grade. Hold this thought because we're going to come back to this one in more detail. But on the next one, before I go on about the third grade teacher moving to fourth grade, Another item to note, the two circled items, Mayfield and Yates, were borderline. I think the threshold was 20.4. What you saw at the last meeting was that the Yates number went up to 20.54, and that's the position that you guys approved an additional kindergarten teacher for at the last meeting. An entire row of Yates teachers were here to show how important that was. So let's go back to the Candies Creek situation. Fourth grade classes started with too many students, and the direction was to move that third grade teacher, and let's see how that affects them. So not too bad for the fourth grade. They add a teacher, but we have a lot of movement in that grade. On the next one, in third grade, students begin with 19 students in each of their class. They've situated into their normal routine. One of those classes is distributed into the other four, and now every classroom has to function with the maximum 25 allowable students. Figure out a new layout to fit in everyone. New students need to be brought up to speed, and it's a tough transition. And I'm running short on time, but from the teacher's position, the transition teacher spends the summer preparing their classroom, reviewing curriculum, studying the IEPs, scheduling activities for their third grade class. Now they are transitioned, they need to redo their room for a new grade level in a new room with a new set of students 3 weeks into the year. That teacher was transitioned twice in the last 3 years. They've not taught fourth grade previously, and their education isn't technically certified for fourth grade as well. So the result, trying to move quickly, is we have over 160 students in the building impacted in some way 3 weeks into the year. The new fourth grade classroom has an overworked teacher, wasn't able to prepare during the summer, isn't certified to teach that grade, and the remaining third grade classes end up at maximum capacity of 25 students.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Your time is up.
Would it be possible to get 1 or 2 minutes to move forward with our summary?
Board, what's your pleasure?
Can I make a motion to let him continue?
How many minutes?
2.
2 minutes. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right. All in favor of extending time for 2 minutes? Say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No? All right.
Thank you. So I'll move quickly. This is the table you looked at the last meeting. The one highlighted in red was Yates, where we did the obvious thing of adding a teacher for the 25 students in each kindergarten class. The next one, here's what I think the policy problem is. The state says that that number is the only one on that slide that's a problem. I think all of those numbers are a problem. The teachers who have 25 students per classroom, it doesn't matter to them that a different grade in their school has 17 or 18, and it brings that average down across K through 3. All that really matters is our grade level average. So my proposal, and there's some following information that you've been provided that shows the research behind it, but my proposal is that we only look at, not only because you have to meet state requirements, but that we look at the allowable capacity on day one for each grade. And that kindergarten should not exceed 21 students per teacher within a school, and that the other grades within the schools at elementary level not exceed 92% of the state capacity, because we know we're going to add students during the year. We know that people are moving into the districts, there's development, and what that would look like is 23 students per class for first through third grade, or K through third, and 28 for fourth and fifth, rather than maxing out these classrooms when we know we're going to add students during the year and be operating over what the state says we should be at. Again, there's some more slides there. City schools have a lot of extra opportunities that are not required. We go above and beyond the state minimum in a lot of places. I love all those opportunities, but I don't think any of those extras will have as big of an impact on our students as a reasonable class size and teachers ready to start on day one in their classrooms. At the end of the day, if I had to choose for my kids, I would choose for my child to be in a classroom of 18 or 19 students without some of the extras than to be in a classroom of 25 first graders or kindergartners with all those extras. Thank you for your time. Again, there's some additional information in the following slides that I think have been provided that shows the research of smaller class sizes make a significant difference in their scoring and reading throughout the years.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. I believe you and Dr. Dyer had a conversation. Did you want to make a comment?
No, we've talked, and I addressed the board last month on that, and can provide update reports in future meetings as requested.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is pretty awesome, I think, because you get to hear a little bit about board members. We did this in the last meeting with our new board members, and now we get to hear from Krista McKay.
I'll try not to shout. I've been using my teacher voice all day. So I'm Krista McKay, and I do have a little script, so forgive me, but I'm going to read so I don't misspeak. But I represent the 2nd District, which encompasses students zoned for Arnold Elementary, part of Blythe Bower, and part of Mayfield Elementary, along with Cleveland Middle School and high school students. This is my 2nd term serving on the Cleveland City School Board, starting my 7th year. I currently am serving as vice chairperson and chair of the site committee, and I've recently reached the level 4 boardsmanship through the Tennessee School Board Association in recognition of professional development and training activities I've completed in relation to serving as a school board member. I've lived in Cleveland for 32 years. I'm married to Sean McKay and have 2 daughters, Kat and Sarah, who are both alumni of the Cleveland City School System. I've been involved with Cleveland City Schools as a parent throughout their time as students, in roles such as PTO president at Arnold Elementary, band mom when they were part of the band in the Cleveland High School, and whatever other activities or sports they were involved in. I also volunteered in their classrooms while they were students. I have been able to witness for myself the excellent teachers and support staff who engage and educate our students at every level. I work as a senior lecturer teaching rhetoric and composition 1 and 2 at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, where I've been teaching writing for almost 14 years. In that role, I get to teach high school graduates from not only our area, but across the state of Tennessee, from all over the country, and even around the world. This gives me a unique perspective to not only view education needs from our students' point of view, but also as an educator. I am a staunch supporter of public education. I believe that a free and equitable education is the greatest asset to our democracy. I'm also a firm believer in Cleveland City Schools, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue the good work that's been done by providing support for and facilitating what our teachers, staff, and students need to ensure the highest quality of education opportunities for every student at Cleveland City Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. All right, next on the agenda, we have the director's update.
All right. Well, good afternoon or evening now, everyone. It's good to be here and good to be with all those in the crowd and those watching online today. I have several updates to go through, so we're going to go ahead and get right to that today. First of all, we're going to recognize that Candies Creek Cherokee and Cleveland High School are both reward schools, and that's something we're very proud of. That takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication. I'm very proud of those 2 schools. We were able to go over and celebrate with cupcakes at Candies Creek not too terribly long ago, and we'll be going to the high school tomorrow during their lunch times and celebrating with some more cupcakes. So I think I just ruined the surprise for the high school people, but you've got cupcakes coming tomorrow. Don't tell anybody. All right, so that's fantastic, but we really appreciate the work they do and the work going on in all of our schools, but those 2 schools we're particularly proud of for being reward schools. This is also National Principals Month. I put a tweet out about this earlier, but this is something that's always celebrated in October. Very proud of all of our school principals. No one really knows that job unless you've walked in those shoes, and it's a tough job. We were talking at lunch today. It is probably the busiest job in the school system just because of time constraints after school and everything else that goes on. But it's a very rewarding job as well. So I certainly appreciate the job of all of our school principals and the work they do each and every day, and they need to be celebrated and approved of. So thank you for the job they do. I want to announce tomorrow we have Tennessee Department of Education officials that are coming. Lisa Kuhn is with the State Department, and she'll be here touring our Raider XD tutoring program at the at the middle school, and then traveling right down the road to Candies Creek. We're very happy that she's going to be here. Cleveland City Schools will be spotlighted because of that, and we will make sure to share that out when that time is appropriate. So looking forward to showcasing some of the great work being done at both of those schools, which represent all of our schools, because tutoring is happening everywhere, but those 2 schools just happen to be close to each other, so it worked out well for their timing and their visit. Do have a little bit of a transportation update for you. I want to update and let you know that currently we have 3 drivers that are in training, so that's a positive development. We have one that we believe will be going to get a license in the next month, so that's an improvement. We want to make sure we're filling all the routes that we can, so we want to keep those 3 working toward that goal of getting that license and support them along the way. We also had a driver next week that will be returning from sick leave, so that will help as well, and with our pickups and deliveries after school, and we're hoping to see continued improvement with that as we move forward through the next few months. We are, of course, doing a transportation study right now. Those results will be out in January, we hope, and that will give us a good look in depth at our transportation department and for us to be able to bring those results to you to think through about what the next steps could be. So look forward to getting those results back over the next few months. Last week, well, the week before fall break, we had a visit from Milan City Schools. Milan is in West Tennessee. Jonathan Criswell, the superintendent there, brought over a crew to the middle school. They had heard good things about the career and technical program that we're offering at the middle school and wanted to come by and see that because they're going to be expanding the offerings at their own middle school. So we were very glad to host them, to have them visit, and they were very impressed. They were impressed with the school facility, number one, but also the number of programs that we offer for a middle school career and technical program. The number of programs we offer in our middle school is unlike what you'll find in middle schools across the state. I've worked in other middle schools. I can promise you the programs that we offer are things that other schools really would love to offer. So I'm very proud of the middle school and the CTE programs that we offer there. Also had the opportunity, our guest here today, the BCPEF lead group, had the opportunity to share with them about policy and advocacy, and that's always a fun thing to do. I know that sounds kind of nerdy, and it probably is, but that's something I really enjoy is policy and advocacy, and had the opportunity to share with them some of the work that we do as a district, that you do as school board members, and that I get to do, talking to either the General Assembly or talking to local legislators or working with TSBA and TOSS and other groups. So that was a fun afternoon to spend, and thanks Lynn and the group for allowing me to come and share a little bit that day. You can pop up the next 3, that'd be great. Also, over the last few weeks, we've been busy with some advisory councils. We held the Teacher of the Year Advisory Council, spent around half a day with our Teachers of the Year from all of our different schools, had the chance to just think about school with them, and they asked great questions and had great feedback, and we had a good time just to sit around and eat some food and talk, and that's always valuable time for them to leave the classroom, have to get a sub and those kind of things. That's not the easiest thing to do. I understand that, but I appreciate them doing that and spending time allowing us to just to really dig in on items that they want to dig into and talk. So that was good. I'm glad to do that. Family Advisory Council was very, very nice as well. We had PTO representatives from our schools come to that, presidents, and we also had some of our booster presidents come to those. We had band boosters, I know football, and some others as well that were there at our meeting. Great discussion, again, a lot of feedback that we're going to take back and be able to use to better the school system, better our communications, better various areas that we're looking into. So another advisory group that I've really enjoyed spending time with before fall break. And we also finished up our employee engagement sessions. That's been really very successful. Going to all of our schools, when the team, Jeff and I, visited all of our elementary schools, on middle school and high school. We had about 12 to 15 people at most of the schools stay, so it was a good sized focus group to be able to hear from. Again, like I've said before, that's totally optional. Whoever wanted to stay could stay. We also had a survey that was out there, and quite a few people have completed that. Dr. Elliott is going to be disaggregating that over the next couple of weeks. It's going to take a little time, but I look forward to sharing that input with you all and our employees when that time comes. So look forward to getting that back and then going from there. So good feedback sessions in a variety of ways, something that really I want to make as a focus this year for me, to be able to get out, get feedback more often directly from those folks who are working in our schools and part of our schools community. Had the opportunity also to go out with our noon Rotary Club at Cleveland to distribute dictionaries. As you know, the dictionary project is a big activity with the Noonday Rotary Club, and getting out and serving by giving out dictionaries to third graders is a lot of fun. Because one of the things we do, we open that dictionary, we go find the longest word in the dictionary. Don't ask me to pronounce it, I came close to spelling that. But also all the other fun parts that are in there, from an atlas to you name it. And a lot of fun just getting out to the schools and being with our teachers and students, and that's a fun thing to do. We also took part in Go Gold Day. Go Gold Day in CCS was on 9/28, and that was in honor of Childhood Cancer Awareness. And we had a lot of teachers, a lot of students wearing gold that day, a lot of fun, but it had a meaning behind it. And we have several of our students and families have been affected by childhood cancer, so we wanted to support them, and this is a good way for us to do that, and I'm glad a lot of our folks participated. We also hosted that same day a bus driver appreciation event over at the bus barn. Donuts and candy bags were a big hit that day. We had a lot of fun with that. Bus drivers loved a little sugar before they got the afternoon bus routes going, and that was fun to do. And they had some great stories to tell, and it was always good to hang out with our bus drivers and our maintenance folks. So that was a lot of fun, big event. Here at Stewart, the Deb Hart Classic was held not too terribly long ago, and that's where our older elementary students have the opportunity to come out right in the field, right out here, and have a big race. And they had a blast, and it was a fun event. The temperatures were perfect. We had probably, I don't know, 100, 150 participants total out there running. There was a girls' race, and then the guys' race followed, and everybody was a winner that day. So I can't remember who won, but everybody was a winner in my book because they outraced me. But that was fun, and it was good to be out here. We had a lot of families, a lot of teachers involved, so it was good to see that from our elementary. And finally, we can bring up the last two bullets. I'm going to let you talk about later the high school stuff, but I'm going to congratulate the middle school in athletics. We have two events that have done really well. So we want to congratulate the Cleveland Middle Lady Soccer team on winning the CTAC championship. That's a huge deal. So congratulations to our Lady Raiders. And also the Cleveland Middle Boys team on capturing the conference championship. So a lot of work goes into that on the staff, from our coaches and our students and all the families involved. So congratulations to those middle school students on a job well done. And that's my update for tonight. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not. Sorry. Two more things. Sorry. Want to recognize Danielle Seal. If you'll just raise your hand. She is now with the Chamber working in workforce development, so glad to have her, and she'll be attending most, if not all, of our meetings and several of our events, and will be a great liaison for our board and our school system to the Chamber, so thank you for being here tonight. And also wanted just to make you aware and publicly let everyone aware, construction has started at Cleveland High School. So the entrances are now under construction. The front entrance and the CTE entrance are both blocked off and fenced. And I drove by on Sunday. Sidewalk is up and coming up, and work is underway. And the new entrance opened today in the lobby of the arena. And I'm sure there were some kinks probably, but it'll be worked out as we go. And glad to see that underway and development is happening. So now that is my report for tonight.
I have a question.
Okay.
On the transportation, Dr. Dyer, do we have a lot of buses that are doing double runs, or children who are getting to school late?
I'm going to hold that and bring up Hal Taylor. Okay. We're going to bring him back in. I will say, yes, there are some buses doing double routes, and that's part of it. I'll let him finish that. Mr. Taylor, we're going to let you come to the microphone. Question was on double routes. How many double routes are we running? You may not know top of your mind, but morning and afternoons, if you'd say roughly.
We're running about, we can run about 4 double routes, and then some of them are hybrid. So like we have a middle high school route, we have a high school middle school route, which is so that causes the students to run, that start at the same time. So we're always pushing it in the morning to get the students on time for those routes, but that's where we are now.
that was a question that I had been asked about, was how many children were being late to school in the mornings.
Well, we're pushing it quite a bit, actually. Especially trying to get in there in time for breakfast. I think they're getting there on the bell time. I think we're making the bell time, but when Byron was here doing our discussions and all, we have a number, and I think that's what our study is going to show. We have a number of students that we're really pushing for them to try to get here and get breakfast. And then even with the bell times, like I said, we're making the bell times for the most part, but even there we're pushing it sometimes because of the way we're set up and the way we have to do our double runs.
Yeah, I think when that study comes down the road, there will be some policy decisions that the board's going to have to look at and think through, but we won't know what that is for, a little bit to go. But I'm looking forward to getting that study, getting the results, and then figuring out what we can do to improve bus transportation, including looking at everything from salaries to hiring to all the different practices and policies that go into that.
Is it primarily a shortage issue of drivers?
Right now,
it's not a bus or
that's
logistics
primarily a
issue?
shortage issue. Same kind of issues that a lot of folks unfortunately are facing right now. This is what we're facing.
Good?
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? All right, so next on the agenda, we have third grade remediation presentation by Ms. Autumn O'Brien.
Good evening. So in January of 2021, Tennessee General Assembly passed the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act. The purpose of this legislation is obviously to address any learning loss and close gaps for students following the pandemic. So as part of the legislation, the General Assembly decided to update the state's third grade retention law. So you will see that board policy in the next section when you're approving policies, and a lot of information is there. For the sake of time and not to double up on what I'm talking about tonight, I've condensed it to 5 slides, but we certainly can answer questions that might pertain to the policy later as well. Go ahead. Next slide. Okay, so why is third grade literacy critical? So this is a slide that Tennessee Department of Education has provided. We've heard for a long time how important third grade literacy is. Children reading at grade level in third grade are more likely to graduate from high school, enter in complete post-secondary programs, and also remain gainfully employed later in life. I'm not going to read every word on this slide, but the key takeaways are in the box on the bottom right, the red box. Low literacy rates negatively impact our students and our state. So we feel like this is a really important area for our third graders to address, and the state has put some legislation behind that. So that is the reason why third grade is looked at as so critical. So key components are the third grade TCAP test, which is taken in May. It is obviously, we test in ELA, math, science, and social studies. We are only referring to third grade English scores. So keep that in mind as we're talking about this. This is a literacy retention law. So this is in regards to ELA. And there are 4 categories, and there are 4 categories, and of the 4, 2 of them would be below the expectation line. So the approaching expectations is a student that falls just below grade level and just below expectation. Those students, those third graders who scored approaching expectation would be required to attend summer school or high dosage tutoring. High dosage tutoring, just in layman's terms, is twice a week, 3-to-1 ratio, and has to be a certified teacher or a trained professional. Those students who score below expectation, which would be further away from the expectation line, that word changes from or to and, so that is summer school and high dosage tutoring. And like I said earlier, the policy kind of frames it out, so I didn't want to take a lot of the thunder from the policy, but there is very specific language within that policy that explains that piece. And there are also some exemptions, including IEPs and 504s, some EL students who have been here less than 2 years in a language program, and a few other exemptions that are listed in that policy. And then the last slide I have is just our current steps. So our academic team has been working with school administrators and our instructional facilitators, RTI folks, just to kind of talk through this and get a process in place. Once it came to you for board approval, we wanted to start that timeline. So we created this slideshow that will be shared with parents, third grade teachers, has been shared with administrators and obviously the school board. Those parent letters will go out next week on the same day that we will also meet with third grade teachers, and the letters will go out to all third grade parents outlining kind of the specific information about third grade and third grade TCAP. And then we are also meeting with school administrative teams to identify those at-risk third graders. So that is in process right now. And we are using as our indicator second grade TCAP scores. So second grade is an optional test that we do give in Cleveland City Schools. In this case, we hope that it's helpful because we get some information from our second graders. So that's going to help us in identifying those students. We are also looking at iReady scores from the beginning of the school year, attendance rates, and other factors that we feel could indicate a level of being at risk. And so individual schools are working on those currently. And then from that, those students who are not currently attached to an intervention, so a 504, an IEP, those students that maybe aren't attending tutoring, we will create a general education intervention plan for those students, and that will be with teachers, parents, and students. We've asked them to finish them by the end of the semester, so by December. And so some schools have a larger roster than others, but we're hoping that they can get those completed in 2 or 3 weeks. But there are a couple schools that have a little bit that may have a little bit larger of a population, and so that may take a little bit longer. And then in January through March, they will gather data and then have those follow-up meetings to review that general education plan, just to see if we're seeing some productive growth from those students, and that if they are attending tutoring or if they've moved into an RTI group or any of those kind of areas, that we can identify that and show progress for those specific third grade students. So that's kind of a very broad overview. Like I said, there's a lot of language in the policy, so I'd be happy to come back up and answer questions when we get to the policy, or answer questions now. I can do whatever your pleasure.
Autumn, do you have any idea as to the number, or is it too early to?
It's too early to give a specific number, but I can tell you that this has the potential to impact many students. So we wanted to be proactive, the instructional team, and then obviously school administrators want to make sure we're doing everything in our power, number one, to communicate, but also to to really be a part of the remediation. The state has used the word intervention plan more than retention plan. And so we want to make sure that we are providing adequate intervention for our students. And so that's been the focus of the work that we've been doing, to make sure that if a student in third grade is not attached to an intervention, doesn't have a 504 or an IEP, or isn't attending tutoring, we know why. Maybe they can't, maybe parents don't want them to, maybe there's a lot of different reasons that could be why they're not attached to an intervention, but we want to make sure that we have a meeting and discuss kind of where they are, make sure parents are aware of where they are, and that we can provide that information. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, so when you asked about, when you talked about the high dosage tutoring, are they getting access to that through the school?
Through the school day, yes,
Okay.
and it does have to be through the school system. They do have to be trained or a certified teacher. We are also exploring options for during the day tutoring, before school tutoring, after school tutoring. So we're trying to work through what the options could be as far as what kind of high dosage tutoring we could provide. Currently, all schools have after school tutoring, and we're almost at capacity for after school tutoring. Some schools have some small groups that are outside of RTI and outside of their work with 504s or ELLs or any of those things. And so some of them just have some breakout groups, and those are helpful as well, but we're just going to explore all of our options this spring to see what types of high dosage tutoring we can provide to meet the needs of as many students as we can.
Autumn,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
over here texting, but my third grader just rose to 4. It
Yes.
was our TCAP score.
Yes.
Can you tell us how the I guess the fourth graders this year in the Cleveland City School System did, compared to the state? I mean, what percentage are we looking at here?
Oh goodness, I should have had that prepared. I don't have that right on me, but I certainly can get you that information. What I can tell you is parents can find out their student scores by logging onto the parent portal, and we sent that information out a couple of weeks ago. So if a parent needs to log in, and there's also information on if they need help, if the login's not working, and you can actually access your reading scores, your math scores, your science scores, and those are always good things to know anyway, just to have that information and know kind of where they're stacking up as far as their achievement in that specific area. But you can log in and find that for your students.
And I guess where I'm at is from the board's perspective, it would be nice for me to know, do we sit at 30, 40, 50% of our students
Right.
not meeting that requirement, and what's the state average, and maybe surrounding communities? How are we affected different than the other groups? Because that seems like a lot of work on some of the administrators and parents.
Well, it is quite a bit, and we do serve a very diverse population. So we have to think about our English language learners that have been here for longer than 2 years, because they're not an exemption. We have to think about those students who come from trauma-filled homes, that they may have lots of different reasons. And so we want to just make sure that's why we really wanted to be intentional and create an at-risk list for each school, so that the administrators, teachers can kind of drill down a little bit and find out, we don't want students to fall through the cracks. So we want to make sure that we look specifically at each student, look at their data, and know why are they there, why are they not attached to intervention, are there interventions that we could provide for those students. Yes, ma'am.
At what point would a student have to repeat the third grade?
So, that's a great question. What we know right now, and there are some questions, there's some gray areas that we just don't have clarification on, but what we know right now is if they are not at expectation, they will have to attend high dosage tutoring or summer school. The exceptions that we know about, or the exemptions that we know of, are 504s, IEPs, ELLs that are less than 2 years, students who have been previously retained. You can't be retained previously, so that if they were retained in first grade, which we don't have any within our school system, but if they transferred in, we might have some that have come from a different school system. There's also a retest option, which is given at the end of the month, so at the end of May, that we will be able to give. If they score above expectation on that retest at the end of May, then they would not have to attend the summer school or the high dosage tutoring. So there are some options. It's just the logistics when we get test scores back, when they attend summer school. So we feel it's really important, most important, to get information as we have it out to parents to make them aware, and those individual conversations, Mr. Coleman, as you were mentioning, as far as knowing where your students are, that we have those conversations with parents so that they aren't surprised, so we don't have anybody, caught off guard in May if their student maybe isn't at expectation, that we've got a plan and we know exactly what we're doing moving forward.
I think the biggest problem might be with ESL students, because you can't learn English in just 1 year.
Right.
And they could be very bright, but still not be able to pass that English test.
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't told you what to do about that?
Not yet.
So, I'm sorry.
Two questions. So this could impact third grade next year.
It could,
It
but
could,
we
as far
do
as back to the class size conversation, it could
back
be.
to the class size conversation. It could, but we actually expect more of an impact in fourth grade, because if you have a plan that says you're going to attend summer school or high dosage tutoring, then you move forward. But if you don't attend, then you're retained in fourth grade. So that high dosage tutoring or summer school. So if your student, if my student, my third grader, is not at expectation in May, I would be informed that they were not at expectation. And the very next step as a parent would be they're in mandatory summer school for 3 weeks in June, and that checks that box, if you will, if they show a certain level of growth. And that's another gray area. We don't know what that level of growth is yet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
The second question, as far as planning, getting tutors, personnel in line, I mean, when does that start? Because if your testing is in the spring,
Right.
you got to have a pretty quick
We
turnaround as far as getting that in place.
Yes, so we are hoping, what our plan is right now is that we have these, the initial creation of the education plans, and then so by March we'll have another set of data so we can show some students who have had adequate growth, but quite frankly, we won't have the information we need until the beginning of May.
Yeah.
I mean, actually the middle of May. So it is a very quick timeline, which is going to be very challenging.
Got one more question.
Yes,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
I was wondering about the cost of tutoring and who pays for the tutoring.
so the state currently provides funding for our after-school tutoring. Now, if we see that we have increased numbers and what that looks like, then that's something that we're going to have to look into. But right now, tutoring is free for our students, and like I said, we're about at capacity, and that certainly will be available next year. But if we see an increased need for staffing, both staffing and the funding also would become a challenge, I believe.
That was my question too.
So I would add, this is state law as it's written today. And, the General Assembly comes back together in January, and there could be changes to this. Can't guarantee that, but I know there's a lot of talk in different circles about different things that might need to be modified or changed in the law, but we have to go by what the law is today. So that's why we are where we are. The FAQ page, for example, just came out right before fall break, and there have continued to be new updates come in from Tennessee Department of Education that we have to kind of recalibrate what we're doing. So we have held off on actually moving forward with this because so many changes were happening behind the scenes that we didn't want to come out and say one thing and then have to come out and change it to the next thing and then come out and change it to the next thing based on emails that are coming in. So where we stand today is where we are, but it's time to move forward with this. October 20th will be the beginning of that with a parent letter going out. There's going to have to be parent meetings that we host as a district down the road that go along with this to explain it. So tonight is the first night of publicly talking about it. I know you all have heard about it at your fall district conference and at school law conference this summer, but this is where the rubber starts meeting the road, so to say.
And some additional information I failed to give. The parent meeting is November 8th, and we'll send out information to families, but it is November 8th, which is Election Day, but it's at 6 o'clock, and we're going to have a Spanish-speaking presenter and an English-speaking presenter, and that will be at Mayfield. So we're going to invite third grade parents there. They can ask questions and give them basically the same information. We're also going to be launching on our website some information that links the fact sheet that Dr. Dyer mentioned, as well as the toolkit, which gives you some really good information as well. So we're hoping to get that launched out the day we send out the parent letter, which is next Thursday. So they'll have information and access online, and we'll probably include information on how to find their students' TCAP scores so they can have that specific information as well.
And one more comment. This has to be a national problem. We can't be the only state that's dealing with this. It'll be interesting to see what the other states, what they come up with.
Coming from experience, a critical point of this is parents' understanding. Because you can get right up to the end and they'll say, I don't want my child to be retained. So I think it's really important that these parents know right up front the possibility.
And that was really our purpose in the education plan, was to bring parents an opportunity to come to the table and have the conversation. and make sure that they had all of the information. I would never want to surprise a parent the third week of May and say, your student has to attend summer school. You know, and that still could very well happen, but we want to shrink that number down where we've done almost everything in our power to avoid that tough conversation. So that was the most important thing to our school administrators and the academic team, to make sure that we can communicate well to parents, and not just communicate by social media and letters going home, but actual one-on-one conversations about their students, where they are, and the things that they need to do to be reading at grade level to help. And that's both at home and at school. That's not just at school. These are some things that you can do to help elevate that learning potential.
That's critical.
Any more questions? Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Thank you. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the first reading of policies. And I just wanted to say thanks again to Mr. Chris Berry for presenting to the board. As Dr. Dyer noted, these conversations will be continuing along with Autumn's presentation there. But the reason why I refer back to that is because the first two policies are being brought to the board for a change for policy 1.403, adding working days instead of days to the language there, as well as for policy 1.404, changing the 5 working days to 3 working days in the policy. Now, the reason why this is being brought is because, just as Mr. Berry presented tonight, we may have opportunities for parents to present, and the way the policy is set, working in conjunction, these two policies, they would have to wait till the next meeting to actually get to speak to the board after the agenda is already posted. So that's why these are being brought to the board for consideration for changes. Okay, any questions about that?
Yeah, maybe I misread, but I might have them transposed, but I thought that the change actually caused that issue. It said that the agenda was going to be posted 4 working days, right? But a parent could, or a community member could ask to be added to the agenda 3 days. So that would be, the agenda would be out, and then they could request to meet after the agenda was already published. Am I misunderstanding that?
Okay, repeat that one more time.
So if the agenda's published 4 days out, say on Tuesday? Is that 4 days?
It's generally Thursdays, right?
Has been in the past.
But in 4 days, it would be the Tuesday. So if they have until 3 days out, it's actually a day after the agenda comes out that they can be asked to be added to the agenda. Does that mean we would get a new agenda?
No. I think it should be, I don't think it should be 3 days. It was an overlap. The current, the original policy did not allow someone to speak to the board until after the meeting was over.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do was make sure that when the agendas are posted, that they have the opportunity to ask the director's office to speak. So I think this math may be off. Can Dr. Elliott speak?
Dr. Elliott, sure. Come to the microphone if you would, please.
Yeah, we've been really talking through these numbers the last couple of weeks, so yeah, let me kind of remember what we talked about there for a minute. I think one of the things we were talking about on these days, and because we did want to make that opportunity for after that agenda, was that the executive committee could adjust that agenda, and that executive committee being the board chair and Dr. Dyer could come together and make an amendment to that. If you read the way that reads, is what, when I remember when we were looking at that, talking about that could be an option, because if the request is approved by the executive committee, the item will be placed on that agenda.
So would we get an updated agenda? How would the board know that that was going to happen? How would we get those materials and be able to?
We would add an item to agenda.
So that would be a follow-up that would say this has been added to the agenda?
Yes.
It would have to be.
Yes, it would be.
So
done.
online, that would be updated, and then we'd have to notify the board once that was done.
Okay.
So the goal, spirit behind this was really to make sure that the public is able to see the agenda, and then if they want to request to speak, we provide that opportunity.
So my concern would be then, the public wouldn't know that that is going to be addressed on the agenda if the agenda has already been published. We would know, but would the public then know that if they were interested in hearing that or being part of that, they wouldn't know to come?
Okay, we mapped this out.
The
already.
line actually, when you look at line 7, says the agenda shall be available for public inspection or distribution when it is distributed to the board members. So I think what you're asking would be covered in that sentence, because the same day that it would go to you,
Yes.
it would go public to the public.
If it were
As
changed.
well.
So
by
we
this
could
policy.
potentially come out with 2 different agendas within the same week.
You could potentially.
So-
If you publish the agenda and then it's out for a day, someone from the public wishes to address that and emails our office and lets us know, then a new published agenda would have to go out the day after that. Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay. Would that still keep us in line with the 4 days' notice?
Technically, no, but we can add an agenda item anytime.
Okay.
We
You
don't
can
want to
even
have
add
that
that
as
at
a
the meeting.
practice, but
Yeah.
you can add an agenda item.
Okay.
All right, so any more questions about those two?
Personally, I like the idea because I can read the agenda, or my family could read the agenda, a student or a teacher could do it, and it gives them an opportunity within 24 hours, small opportunity, to get up and say, I need to speak on that. And they know what's coming up on the agenda.
Right.
More time would be better, but it is what it is.
Any others? All right, next policy we have is 3.201, and it's regarding safety. And this particular policy pretty much is overhauled. A lot of the language was changed to bring it up to date. Some of the language that was changed was shifting from disaster preparedness plan for a nuclear or other major emergency to more along the line of general disaster preparation. As you can see on line 22 and 23, that sentence was restated to say all staff shall report any person trespassing or deemed to be acting improperly on school premises to the principal. So those are the changes that are highlighted there in 3.201. Okay, any questions about that policy? All right, the next policy we have is 3.203, crisis management. And same here, shifted some of the language away from crisis management to things like emergency operation, away from crisis team to safety team. And that's the nature of the changes here in this policy as well.
I've got a question on that one. So would we want to change the title of that policy to emergency
Good call.
instead of crisis management?
Yes.
Okay.
So emergency operations would be your,
Whatever fits for what is trying to be communicated. I didn't know if we were tied to those titles to be consistent with policy names across.
I think the policy number is probably the
Okay.
more
Yeah.
important item.
I think emergency operations would be, got to look at Mr. Eason. I think that would be appropriate. So we can make that change and bring it for second reading.
I have a question about the safety team.
And that can be asked as long as, or it can't necessarily be answered if it provides internal private information. So, but go ahead and ask your question.
I was just wondering, do they choose the safety team at the beginning of the year and they remain a team throughout the year? It's not per crisis?
No, there's a safety team at each school and at the district level, and that remains the same, and those folks work together with Mr. Eason and others to make sure that the emergency operations plans are operational at the
So
schools.
it's chosen at the beginning
Right,
of the year.
that's correct.
Okay.
Any more questions for that policy? All right, moving on to the next policy, 3.211, new project planning. On line 5, the board or a representative appointed by the board will present architect's concept to City Council and request funding for the architect to develop final plans. That's the change there. And line 6, upon receiving funding commitment from City Council, the board will put the project out for bid or guaranteed maximum price. And those are the changes in this particular policy. Are there any questions? All right. Next policy, 3.2001, regarding energy management conservation. All right, so we had some change in language here as well. On line 6, starting there, struck out synergistic and replaced it with partnered energy conservation organizations. And the same throughout the document. But also on line 15, there was some language change to say an energy conservation and management program will be administered primarily through the energy specialists and administrators. Also on line 21, instead of adopted, replaced that with followed, and also took out the within 90 days limit there at the beginning. All right. Any questions for this particular policy? Good. All right, so the next policy, 4.603. This particular policy, believe was submitted to the Tennessee School Board Association, and they basically gave us an updated model policy, and that's what you see listed there. So any questions? I'm not going to read that because you guys have that, but are there any questions for this particular policy?
I will just say this policy puts into motion what Mrs. O'Brien basically delivered to you a minute ago. What you're looking at here is the new state law dealing with promotion and retention of students. So this is just putting into policy what is currently the state law.
If I heard Ms. O'Brien correctly, she said this is still kind of being molded and not really enacted.
It's being enacted, but there could be potential movement in Nashville that could change some of this. But as of today, what you have in front of you is the law that's in statute and is codified by State Board of Education rules. So this is where we are today, but I'm just putting it out there could be potential changes. Something we'll have to watch as we move back into when the General Assembly is back in Nashville again. But this is accurate as of today.
Is this language suggested?
This language is suggested from TSBA based on the laws that are out there. Yes, sir.
And just for information's sake, we do subscribe to a policy service from the Tennessee School Board Association, and they provide model policies such as what we have here so that we are in line with state law.
And I'll remind you too, this is first reading, so
yes,
there will be a second reading next month, so you'll have more time if something comes up. This is a law that or a policy that I would not recommend changing without consulting our board attorney first.
Okay, any more questions? All righty. So, I think that is the last. Is that in the packet? Okay, so we have one more, 3.500, food service management. Some language change here. For example, the systems district or the systems school nutrition supervisor will oversee the program, changed to the district's school nutrition supervisor, who will oversee the program. On bullet 2 here, free and reduced price meals, snacks must be made, changed to shall be made, available to students who are determined eligible for these benefits. And then further down in a couple paragraphs below that, a line has been removed. The number of charges allowed for kindergarten through 12th grade is the dollar equivalent of 3 lunches. This amount is up to $7.50 on the elementary, middle level, and $8.25 on the high school level, regarding of whether breakfast or lunch. So we're striking that from that policy there. And then a line was added under the heading free and reduced price meals. Students who participate in no cost or reduced cost meals will not be distinguished in any way from other students during food service. All right? Then an entire paragraph was added for students requesting modified meals, and explains the procedure there. Also, the final paragraph was added for collection of unpaid meal charges. So any questions about this particular policy?
One reminder, we are currently under CEP, so no students are paying cash for any meals at this time, but we have to have a policy in place in case we ever go off of the community eligibility program and charges have to be put back in. Kathy Berry is here today. She's our supervisor of school nutrition. Did I say that correctly? Okay. So currently, the updates are updates that are needed to our policy to bring us into line with state and federal regulations on school nutrition. But again, all of our meals are provided at this time at no cost to students or families.
All right, any more questions about this or any of the other policies? So I'd like to entertain a motion to accept these for first reading. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of accepting these policies for first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? We have all yeses. Okay. All right, next on the agenda, we have strategic plan focus. I'll turn that over to Dr. Dyer.
Yes, Dr. Lang is going to come up and give us an update on secondary education. Dr. Lang.
Good evening. I would like to go over some things that we're doing in the secondary world to let you know how things are going with some different programs and projects. Our agenda for what we're going to go over is we're going to go over the AVID program, the RISE program, walkthrough observations, and math textbook adoption. All right, the first we'd like to go over is AVID. AVID is Advancement via Individual Determination. Dr. Dyer was at a conference. He came back to Dr. Elliott and I and said, I've heard a lot about this. I'd like for you all to investigate this to see if it would benefit the students that we have here in Cleveland City Schools. So Dr. Elliott and I went to a conference, and what we learned is that we brought back this to the committee here at the Administrative Office Board, and then the middle school. And the middle school principal, Mr. Akiona, and I, along with Dr. Elliott, we talked about piloting a program, and that's what we're doing this year. We're piloting a program with 6th grade students, and the goal is to close the opportunity gap by preparing all students for college readiness and success in a global society. So we're looking at students who may be from underrepresented groups in college. They may be a potential first generation college graduate, different types of groups. What we're doing is we're piloting it with this group of students. They are receiving instruction in their classes and during a specials type class where they are learning skills that actually I didn't learn when I was in school, and it was very interesting. They are learning note-taking skills. Specifically, they're learning Cornell notes. They're learning organizational skills. They're researching colleges, learning what it takes to go to a college. They're learning different types of reading skills, and they're giving these students, I spoke to the students not too long ago and told them, I asked them, what's going on? What are you learning? And one student said to me, I'm learning that I really can be all that I can be. And I can go to college if I want to, even though my parents didn't. And to me, just that one student saying that to me was very exciting. And we've gotten such buy-in from our teachers, from the administration. We want to go ahead and perhaps at the middle school next year, move a group on to the 7th grade. And we want to grow this program. I've also spoken to Mr. Pritchard at the high school, and he's very interested in it as well. So AVID is something that we are piloting right now at the middle school. At the high school, what we are doing is we have a new program. What they have enacted is called RISE. And the RISE program is 25 minutes each day. It's the first period of the day, and it's Raiders Inspired for Success and Excellence. And so these students are getting together, and their teachers have a curriculum for them on capturing kids' hearts lessons. Like I was looking at the curriculum for this week: empathy, teamwork, kindness, doing a service project. They're also working with Major Clarity, which is our program to do career exploration. They're looking at different careers. They're taking career assessments. They're seeing what might be there for them that they had not thought of before, so that they can be prepared for what they can do in the world. Also, they do face-to-face Fridays. This is very important. One of the first lessons was teaching these students to check their email regularly, all right? Making sure we're checking our email, that we're learning how to do a credit check, taking ownership of their education, seeing where they are on their path to graduation. And so that's what's going on at the high school in the RISE program. Also, as in elementary, Ms. Bender spoke about last month, the middle and the high school are also participating in walk-through observations. We are partnering with instruction partners, and they come to us and we walk, and what we do is we look for specific things in the classrooms so that we can learn and give teachers the tools to improve our Tier 1 instruction. And we're actually going to be at the high school on Wednesday, and I believe the middle school on Thursday. The next thing going on in the secondary world is math textbook adoption. And math textbook adoption is an exciting time. The state has new math standards, which will go into effect next year. And we may have a time to talk about those standards, but basically we're incorporating more statistics in the high school, because what the state of Tennessee is finding, that's one thing that most of our students need post-secondary are more statistics. And so the state has more statistics standards for our students, but we have to choose textbooks. And so the Tennessee State Board of Education in November will release the list of approved textbooks that our local textbook committee will be able to look at. I will have, for the next board meeting, there will be, for you to approve as a board, the committee and their qualifications. What they will be doing is they will be listening. They will be, they're right now, our teacher leaders have been intently studying the new standards so that they're familiar with them whenever they do look at new textbooks. We're going to offer times for parents, for community members, for all teachers to look at these textbooks before a decision is made with our textbook adoption. So that's what's going on in the secondary world. Do you have any questions? Yes.
I've got a question about the RISE program. Where do you find the time for that? Is it during homeroom?
It is like a homeroom. It's the first 25 minutes of the day. So it's not a full block. It's just when they first go to school, it's the first thing on their schedule.
So it doesn't take time away from any of the other classes you've ever had?
I think whenever they go through, they kind of had this out for a different type in their schedule last year. They called it something else. This year we've rebranded it, changed it, and made it RISE.
I can just comment on that since...
Oh yes, you're in RISE.
So it actually added a few minutes to classes, I think, or it went to
because it's only 25 minutes.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Last year we had what's called climb in the middle of the day for 30 minutes, and now this is only 25 minutes, and those minutes are either going to the added fourth lunch, like, because now instead with the influx of students, instead of 3 lunches, we have 4, so it could either go into that time or the classes themselves. But it's shorter than it was last year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next on the agenda, we have site committee.
Yes, and I'm going to ask Hal Taylor to come up and talk to us, share with you some findings on the temporary boiler situation at Mayfield.
Can everybody make sure that you're talking into the mic?
I'm sorry.
So that they can hear you here in the room and online. Thank you.
Okay, well, we, as you know, as we discussed last month, or at the site committee, we have some issues at Mayfield. So I'm addressing you with 2 purposes tonight. One is a temporary boiler that the site committee has approved coming you with, and the other is hiring the architect to come up with a plan to install a permanent boiler into the geothermal field. Our geothermal field is at half capacity now, and so in order to get through the winter time, if we have a very cold winter, we probably don't have enough capacity to keep Mayfield warm. So our immediate need is to bring in a temporary boiler system that we would have to pipe into the school and to help us make it through the winter, like I said, down into the 20s or so. Right now we have enough heat starting into the winter. We can handle what we're dealing with now, but when we get into the really frigid days, we might have a difficult time keeping the heat where it is at Mayfield. Long term is to come and ask for the fact that we need to hire the architect and engineering firm to come in and give us a long-term plan and then come back to you with their plan and let them get your approval to move forward with that plan. So those are the 2 things I would say tonight. We're looking roughly cost-wise for the temporary boiler. I'm going to give you an estimate of $40,000 to $60,000 to bring this in. It depends on what kind of winter we have, how long we have to keep it, and then it has to be piped into a system that doesn't have a boiler in it at this point in time. And then long term, we're probably talking $400,000 to $500,000 to make a permanent repair because it's going to require construction, mechanical construction with it. So that's where, you know, we'll need the architect and engineer to advise us on how we go about that.
So this was passed by the site committee, and so it comes to the board as a motion, and it doesn't require a second. So I'll leave that to you to take, or do I take the vote, or do you take the vote?
I'll take it. All right, so all in favor of this recommendation?
Questions?
Yeah, we're going to come to it. Okay. All in favor of this recommendation? Say aye.
Aye. So we,
Or do you want to do questions first?
You want to do questions first?
yeah, we should.
All right, let's do questions.
The longer-term plan, do we have any idea how long it would take to implement that? Or we'd have to wait until the engineers get involved?
No, hopefully, it would be a fairly quick plan that would be done most likely over the summer, because it would be a hard plan to do while we had school in session. So that would probably be a summertime program. We would start right at the end of school, and we would try to get done over the summer, or we might even start a little earlier before school gets out if the weather allows for us to. So that's going to be, you know, what we're looking at.
Logistically, you just couldn't get it done this year, is that?
Yeah. Logistically, there's not enough time, and what we're running into is ordering. Right now, to get any equipment is 6 to 9 months. So that's why we're having to come to you too. Even the summertime, we kind of need to get moving now because, like I said, to get any HVAC, commercial HVAC equipment, there's a 6-month lead time. It's pretty incredible for our industry right now. Yes, ma'am.
Are we purchasing a temporary boiler, or are we buying it?
We're leasing or renting.
Just leasing it, so we can't resell it then?
No, we can't. They
Okay.
will bring it in, they will take care of it, and part of that, though, is the piping, having to pipe the system in. Yes, sir.
How long does it take to install the temporary?
They'll come in with the temporary, you're talking about a week or two, once it's established the way to go about doing it.
And just a question I have, it's been code the last couple of days, so are the students good for now and until the boiler gets installed?
Yeah, we're good right now. Like I said, we still have half capacity, so we're good. We're talking about the extreme weather that we will have a difficult time maintaining the building. When we get those 20-degree days, daytime temperatures of 20 degrees and so forth, that's when it will be tough probably to maintain the temperature, say at 70. And we've always been able to maintain 70 when it's 20 degrees outside. So that's where we're starting to get, concerned.
Any more questions? All right, all in favor of accepting recommendation as presented? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it carries.
Okay, and I'll just ask,
I'm on.
okay, Dr. Elliott, to talk about the summary of the facilities plan.
Sure. I'm going to introduce some of the components, and then Hal Taylor's going to come, and Michael Kars is here as well to help answer some questions that you might have. In August, 2 months ago at our board meeting, we had the opportunity to have our architect consultants come before the board and present about a future facilities master plan. And the board had charged the group to come forward with a future plan. And they presented that at the August board meeting that was held at Cleveland High School. That is posted on our Cleveland City School website, and you can find it there. We did want to come back and summarize that information. I know, make sure everybody is seen and is aware of that plan, so that this will kind of help us for the next stage and steps I know that the board will want to take a look at. On the second page that you go to on the presentation, you will see the introduction there. And the executive summary is the first part, but it has a table of contents. And over 20 years ago now, 25 years ago, in 1996, the school board charged back then to do a 20-year long-range plan. And all those pieces fell into place regarding, you can think back to Blythe Bower days and Cleveland Middle School and Bayfield days and the completion of Candies Creek Cherokee and the forward vision that those individuals had. And that was great. And we celebrate those nice facilities. As that came to an end, Mr. Taylor and the facilities team started looking at, okay, it's time to begin to look at that. Well, after the pandemic and our strategic plan was developed, we knew that it was time for a new facilities plan to be put into place for sure. And so here before you see that, in the spring of 21, these architects worked with, as you can see in the table of contents here, analyzing individual elementary schools and their capacity and what was going on in those schools at the time. It also took a look at the future needs of a middle school, the growing population at Cleveland Middle School and how that capacity was set in place, and then also the needs at Cleveland High School facility-wise, from not only from CTE needs, but our arts programs and all the other aspects of the high school. So in this plan, you're going to see a lot of details related to that. In the fall of, after that, in the fall of 21, this time last year, we had focus groups. A lot of those focus groups came from middle school, some upper elementary. We had a group come together with some representatives from the elementary, upper elementary, and middle school because we were looking at some ideas around an intermediate school. We had individuals meet at Cleveland High School from different departments to talk about the impact of facilities to begin this long-range initiative. And in this facilities plan, you can start to see some of the high-arching ideas that come out of this. This helps us set some stages and put things into motion. Throughout this plan, you'll see that. Mr. Taylor can, I know, speak to the facility piece of that. I will also say that one of the things that we looked at when our architects were here and we were discussing with individuals is this classroom capacity concept around, and they gave us two options, and you'll see that throughout our plan, that if we went with our state numbers that are out there, our formula for BEP formula at the time, that might change as our funding formula changes in the future, but right now the BEP formula, that is considered the one option. But then we also looked at it 90% capacity. Like if we decided in a school or across different schools to bring that capacity down because of class sizes or whatever, we wanted to put that contingency in, and the team and the architects advised us, and we looked at it in that regard. So I'm gonna let Hal Taylor take a look at that and go from there.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott. I'm presenting tonight. Brian Templeton was out of town this week, and so I know he would like to be here, but he just wasn't able to make it, so I'll be presenting tonight to cover what was covered back that you approved, the board approved back in August. So what we're talking about is the executive summary came up with something. I'm going to kind of start with where what you approved first was the new intermediate school, which would be a 5th and 6th grade school. That would be recommended space requirements of about 176,646 square feet. That would be roughly on 30 to 35 acres. It would have a core capacity of 1,200 students, a planned capacity of 1,000 students, and roughly rough cost right now would be 79 million, which would not include land cost. We can move on. So we'll look a little closer at that. As you can see on the next page, it covers the soft cost down in there, what we just said, repeated about the new intermediate school. One of the reasons we are talking about the intermediate school instead of when we got to looking is we realized it would take a whole second middle school, but then you would still have an issue with your elementaries being overcrowded. Now you have a middle school that you would be looking at. How do you divide that? What does that look like? We have a 1,400 capacity middle school presently. So in looking at what we have and what would be the best way moving forward, it realized that an intermediate school would relieve the pressure on the middle school, and at the same time, that it would relieve pressure on the elementaries. There would also be a cost factor with not having a middle school. You would be able to have a core for the 1,200 students, but you're not going to have double the sports facilities at the elementary. You're going to have more of the rooms, but you're not going to have the specific rooms you get into with the middle school. So there is a cost factor in maintaining your intermediate school, which is going to help you out, overall with. So that was one of the reasons they came up with it. Also, like I said, if you build just another middle school, you still have the issue of what do you do with crowding in the elementary. So moving forward, that was why the board voted on that recommendation. One of the things you'll see under section C there, that occupy by the year 2030. You'll notice we're saying occupy by the year 2030. The problem is that's if we go by the state numbers, the state ratio numbers, and not the optimal capacity. And it takes 3.5 years to design and construct a school of this size. Not to mention that doesn't count the time it takes to find the land and approve the land that you're going to have to locate and get funding from the city council. So when we start looking at the numbers, that's where we have to start really deciding which way we're going to go. If you will look on the next page, it was page 8 on y'all's. If you look at our K through 5 elementary schools, okay, presently, if you look there in the far right column, or excuse me, it'll be the left side of the paper. The right column, it says 2021, 2022 K through 5 student enrollment. If you go down through all our schools and you look, our estimated enrollment at that time was 2449. Presently, we are actually at 2513. So that enrollment on that side is actually low. We're at 2513. And if you look at the point that we are full, if we wait till we are 2719, which is what we would predict in 2025, okay, that we're not that far off. We're a couple hundred off from there. But if you will look at the optimal and the classroom capacity, our optimal size is actually 2,556. If you see there, we're 40 away from already being at our optimal capacity at K through 5. And we're not even to 2025 yet. So I think we have to sit here and look at this and say, yes, if we want the school at state standards for our teacher ratios, then yes, okay, we can look at 2030 as a date to occupy. If we want it any less, you're not only talking about hiring teachers, you're having to talk about classrooms as well. So that's a consideration that I think the board's going to have to look at moving forward with numbers. And one thing that you need to know is we can never operate at 100% capacity because you never know how many students you have. I'm actually going to let Michael probably address that if he would, because he knows numbers better than I do. But like I said, you can never operate at 100% capacity because you have different students at different schools and different classes. If you go on to the next page, if we go up to the top row, we're looking at Cleveland Middle School. Presently, we have 1302, but presently we have 1,275 as of today's figures. These were some older figures from a few weeks ago, so now we have 1,275. Again, our classroom capacity is 1,200. Our optimal planned capacity is 1,080. So you see right now in our existing Cleveland Middle School, we are already full. And even at our optimal, you know, we're past our optimal at this point. So if we wait to 2030, that's at 1.3% growth, by the way. At 2030, we're talking about 1,442 students at the middle school. And again, that's 1.3% growth a year would get us to that number. So that is the numbers that we're looking at for the intermediate school. I think, you know, the thing that's going to have to be decided is how we push forward with that. And I'll let Krista talk about that here in a bit. But, you know, which numbers are we going to go by and what's optimal compared to what is standard, and how we want to move forward and what we want to go with the city council with. But as you can see, we're already moving very full, even though this is a study that's just been done. We move on to the other executive summary for the high school. And on the top row for the high school, the existing school, you see there, it says 1788. We actually have 1,847 students enrolled. So once again, if you look at the classroom capacity, 1,865. If you look at optimal planned capacity, we're looking at 1,585. So the idea that 2030 was supposed to be 1,852, but today we're at 1,847 already at the high school. So the idea at the high school is that we need to start looking at that after the intermediate school. And the conclusion came up that we would look at the high school in 3 parts. We would do, first part would be Cleveland High School, would be phase 1. If we can go through, phase 1, if you look up in the right top corner of the map of the drawing, you see a CTE wing. Part of what we have to do if we move forward with this planned existing school, we would look at demolishing the west wing, a good part of the west wing. And in order to make that happen, we would have to move CTE areas. CTE areas can't be put in portables. They have equipment and they have electrical standards and codes. So you would start shifting your CTE over into a new area, and that would be phase one. Developing your CTE area, expanding that, moving your CTE classes. Then at that point, you could move to phase two, which would be you would come in and you would do a West Wing Performing Arts addition, 36,500 square foot after demolishing part of the West Wing. There you would have portables that you would bring in at that point to help you get through the demolition and reconstruction. And then finally, you would probably come in, best recommendation would come into a phase three. And on phase three, you're looking at 28,000 to 40,000 square feet. And it would be a West Wing addition. Most likely something to 2-story that would allow you a lot more capacity in the school and replace the classrooms as well and expand your classroom space. So that is what in a nutshell, we came up with, or our architects and came up with in their study. Those were the conclusions that they're looking at. If I put this in summary, like I said, I'm just summarizing a very long report. I'm sure all of you have taken a closer look at it.
Thanks, Hal. This was a FYI info session, but does anyone have any questions?
I know that one issue has been, do we add a transitional school there with 5th and 6th grade and things like that? What are some of the other centers that are seeing the same level of growth that we're doing? Are they adding that 5 and 6 intermediate school, or how have they handled that?
There are some schools, Dr.
Well, yeah, there are different districts handle it in different ways. You know, some build another elementary school and rezone the whole district. Others, I'm trying to think, is it Oak Ridge or Maryville? Maryville has built an intermediate school that has helped with their growth. So there's different ways of looking at this. But, you know, what we found through the various focus groups that we held with this architect plan was that the intermediate school is what bubbled up in those focus groups as a real solid plan of action that can move us forward. And that's when the board was presented that in August. That's why they approved that plan for various reasons also. But yeah, I mean, there's different ways you can handle that, but that's the current plan that we have in front of us today. The approved plan anyway at this point.
The middle school is basically landlocked. That was one of the
Right.
issues. There's just no way to add on, reasonably add on to the middle school at this point.
Do we have any more questions? All right, I just want to remind everybody and inform you, if you didn't already know, that the plan is available on the website. If you go to the website and select menu, and then under the Director of Schools section, there is a link for the future facility plan. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so next we have on the agenda is we want to hear from our student representative, Ms. Patel.
Okay. So at the end of last month, halfway through to the end of last month, we had College App Week. And I think it was pretty successful. It reminded seniors that they need to get down to applications, including me. The construction that we were talking about started. That I noticed, once I kind of forgot it was happening until I actually got to the campus today. I was like, oh, well, I am going to be late. Thankfully I wasn't. But when we were getting out of when we were dismissed from school, I realized since most kids stand in the middle where they're doing construction, there was a lot of confusion, which of course it's the first day. Some students, I don't even know where everyone went, but like we stayed obviously in the front near the arena, but like a lot of kids were like, where do I go? Some kids were still standing on that like small sidewalk in front of the like main area of the school. So I'm interested to see what it ends up looking like, and I just wanted to report on how that went the first day. We switched sides, our home side switched, which was a huge like surprise to a lot of students at our school. I didn't make it to the game last Friday, so I didn't really get to experience that switch yet. I've heard lots of mixed emotions about it. I've heard some people, I have some friends that are in like digital media, and they're like on the floor recording the student section, and I personally didn't think about this, but one of my friends brought up that they'd be shooting against the sun now, so we'd be cast in darkness. I haven't again gotten to see how that looks, but I've also heard some teachers and other people say, oh, the sun's not going to be on our eyes anymore. That's nice. So there's mixed opinions on that. We'll see how we end up. Maybe we'll warm up to it. We'll see. We also, speaking of which, we won against Maryville, which a lot of students were pumped about. Again, I wasn't there to experience the joy, but I'm still happy. We just had fall break. A lot of students were a bit confused about how like the 9 weeks are ending after fall break. Like this is the last week, I think. So that's not like a huge difference, but I just wanted to, I've heard some people, they're like, oh right, we're still in the same like classes that we were before. I was really proud. So when we were mentioning the like AP scholars and stuff today, the National Merit Scholarship, Bailey Johnson, she's like we grew up together, and I'm just like, I was like really proud to see that she won it. Homecoming is coming up, which is exciting. I've heard like several students talking about what they're wearing and like all that. So everyone's like super excited. I'm glad we still have a homecoming week. A lot of students were thankful for that because there was a period where we weren't sure if we were going to get one because of past events, which we don't need to mention. In sports, swimming is starting up soon. Swimming tryouts are actually today and tomorrow. Bowling is getting some games too. I'm thinking about going to one of theirs, so we gotta support. And I think that's it. There's just a lot of change right now, and honestly, we're just seeing how it ends up working because this is where it starts.
Thank you. Is there anything else a board member has? Want to mention? All hearts and minds clear? All right, so we'll consider this meeting ended at 7:23.